Assalamu alaikum, Imam Hamid.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Maraj. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Long time not
Anta
see
Imam.
you. I see you.
Brother Miraj, Assalamu alaikum, my Imam, Sister Hala,
Wa
Assalamu
alaikum
alaikum.
assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam Yazid. Brother Miraj, you have to comply with the my Imam orders. You have to show your face. He thinks you're not in. You already left?
No.
Hey,
You remember
hey.
your name is
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, okay. So, my Imam wants to see you in person like that. The way
Really, I like to visit him, not only see him. I like to visit him.
How about Miraj?
inshallah.
You tell me the place that he can see where you will be available, right?
I don't know why you want to see me, Imam.
Because I have to see my mask with your mask together to see each other with the mask.
Oh my God, Ya Allah. You know how privileged you are, Brother Miraj, that he's always mentions you.
Welcome, Sister Pat.
Yes.
Chaplain Patty.
Your brother Muhammad Shibli on the road driving is not able maybe to be with us or maybe to open the Zoom. Please take care about his.
Yeah, Brother Miraj already took care of that. So
Alhamdulillah.
it's being recorded right now, so everything is okay, it looks like, hopefully. All right, very good. My Imam, we have Abu Yazid also doing the same thing, routine of Quran session, right? Hopefully.
Yep. Brother
Assalamu alaikum.
Majid.
كيف حالك؟ يا
الله.
Imam Abu Yazid, you are here? I was testing you are here, not. MashaAllah.
Yes,
Thanks for coming in.
We all planning to visit Mi'raj, all the mashayikh.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Wow.
Miraj,
Brother Miraj. I think he's on his way out, looks like, I think. I'm not sure.
No, inshallah. We see each other in our hearts every day.
That's not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough for Shaykh.
Abu Yazid.
Habibna.
The Bedouin, when they visit each other from one village to other village, from one desert to other desert, they will never call, they will never send a message, they will never, ask the host to be ready. They just walk in. Don't worry about it. The minute you are ready, I will be your driver.
Inshallah. Agree. It's like a plan, inshallah.
No, Abu Yazid is going to drive himself there too, looks like.
Inshallah.
Okay, with your permission, Imam, I can start. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Time right now is 8 o'clock. Halaqah will last for an hour. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Today is Saturday, the 4th of Safar, 1443, 11th of September, 2021. With the permission of all shaykhs, my respected brothers and sisters, welcome to our halaqah. I have the honor and privilege to introduce today's halaqah number 537. Our honor speaker tonight is Sister Chaplain Patty. Welcome to the halaqah, Sister Patty. May Allah bless you, you and your parents for the participation in this halaqah. Then we have our Imam Abu Yazid doing the recitation of the Holy Quran for the 80th time. And he will be continuing on the Quran session number 47, Juz 5, and Surah number 4, which is Surah An-Nisa. And ayah number 36 onwards, by the instruction of my Imam, please open your Quran. As our Imam Abu Yazid recites these ayah itself, you can benefit much more in a better way. And you can earn the rewards for that too, the way he does that thing. And my Imam will appreciate that. Imam Ahmad Shibli is appearing for the 270th time doing the translation and tafsir where the ayah recited. May Allah bless you, my Imam, for your contribution to this halqa. With all the things that you are doing around yourself in Islamic Society of Central Jews, you get the time for this hour halqa, we do appreciate. All the participants do appreciate your participation in halqa. Then we have,
and to everybody, inshallah.
thank you. Jazakallah khair. Then we have the timeline goes 15:30 and 15-minute time slot. We have 15 time slot is recitation and the translation of the Holy Quran. 30-minute time slot is for Sister Chaplain Patty. And then we have the last is 15-minute time slot. The question and answer and dua and closure will be done in that. My request to anybody asking question, short answer. And may Allah bless everybody. Welcome to the halqa itself. The floor belongs to Pink. Maybe Brother Miraj can do that honor. Brother Miraj. Brother Miraj is gone. Faddal.
تفضل.
Imam. Yeah, Imam Abu Yazid, Faddal.
جزاك الله خير بشرى عبد المجيد. بارك الله فيك. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. واعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا وبذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين والجار ذي القربى والجار الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل وما ملكت أيمانكم إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا الذين يبخلون ويأمرون الناس بالبخل ويكتمون ما آتاهم الله من فضله وأعتدنا للكافرين عذابا مهينا والذين ينفقون أموالهم رئاء الناس ولا يؤمنون بالله ولا باليوم الآخر ومن يكن الشيطان له قرينا فساء قرينا وماذا عليهم لو آمنوا بالله واليوم الآخر وأنفقوا مما رزقهم الله وكان الله بهم عليما إن الله لا يظلم مثقال ذرة وإن تك حسنة يضاعفها ويؤت من لدنه أجرا عظيما فكيف إذا جئنا من كل أمة بشهيد وجئنا بك على هؤلاء شهيدا يومئذ يود الذين كفروا وعصوا الرسول لو تسوى بهم الأرض ولا يكتمون الله حديثا صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah, Imam Abu Yazid,
Allah
for a beautiful translation, beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. So I will request my Imam to do the honors, continuing after this, as he always does. Faddal, Imam.
الله يزيد فضلك برادر عبد المجيد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سار على هديه إلى يوم الدين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Our dear respected Imam, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, our beloved nephew Ahmad, allowed me to greet all of you with the Islamic greeting and say to all of you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First of all, allowed me to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward all of us, and a special reward go to the brothers and the sisters who are not in the Zoom tonight for one reason to the others. And one of them, our Imam, Fadilat Sheikh Muhammad Shibli, He was visiting one of his friend who passed away last year and coming back to home. Inshallah, he will arrive safety with his family, and may Allah reward him and reward all of us. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Second thing, yesterday we did touch a little bit about the occasion, sad occasion of what we call it, happened 20 years from back, 2001, which means the occasion of September 11. And today, as September 11, we were gathering together in South Brunswick Township, Muslim, Christian, Jews, Hindu, Sikh, name it. All the type of the people, with the mayor, with the chief of the police, with the fire department, with the first aid help, with everybody, and with the school student, you know, just to stand up together as one family in one township as we pray to the people who pass away, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our country, protect our land, protect our home, protect ourselves, not only from Corona, but for any other thing, inshallah ta'ala. The second thing related to the verses were recited tonight by our Imam, Fadil Sheikh Abu Yazid, Jazahullah Khair. I admire very well his wisdom and his hikmah. He knows from where he started, and he knows exactly where he stopped, just to connect the subject together and to make it easy for me to understand my book as the Quran Kareem. And may Allah reward him. May Allah reward his parent. May Allah reward our parent. And may Allah reward everybody listening and following the advice by look at the Quran Kareem, looking at the Quran Kareem as a book, exactly as you look at the Kaaba. Imagine you are in Makkah al-Mukarramah. Imagine you are on the sahan of the floor of Al-Kaaba, and from all the four corners, Al-Rukn al-Yamani, Al-Rukn al-Yamani, Al-Rukn al-Shami, Al-Rukn al-Iraqi, and Al-Hajj al-Aswad, all of them look at the Kaaba. Exactly when you open the Quran Kareem, you read it to yourself or somebody recite it to you, exactly you will be rewarded as looking at the Kaaba when you are little far away from it. And that is what we're supposed to do, and may Allah reward you for doing that. The verses were recited, talking about many subjects. Let me mention the subject first. One of the subjects is to worship Allah alone. وَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and don't have any partner with Him. Second subject, there is a list of the people. They have right on you to stand with them. I will go over their name, inshallah ta'ala. And the other subject, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about the person who does not like to give. In Arabic, we call it al-bakhil, the opposite of generous. And those people, Allah will punish them on the day of judgment if they have to give, but they refuse to give. And the other subject, the people who like to give, but they don't give in the sake of Allah. They give just for showing off. They give it in a public or a private, just showing off the people. See, he is a generous, but between him and Allah, Allah knows his intention, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will encourage us to believe in him, to believe on the day of judgment, to believe in the akhirah, inshallah ta'ala. Let me take only maybe a couple minutes to list the name. Allah lists them, which means we have to stand with them regardless of what, according to our ability. The first group of the people are your parent and my parent. Imagine, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, not only one place or two places or three places. I have the verse in front of me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the name of the parent right away next to his name. And be proud about that. Don't try to humiliate your parent if they are living or they pass away. As long as you are obeying Allah and you know the right of your parent on you, be careful. The worst thing is to say to them no. The worst thing is to say to them off. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in this verse, about my parent and your parent, if they pass away, may Allah bless their soul, or if still alive, may Allah give them long life to honor them. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. The first category is our parent. Second category, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, your relative. Let me beg you, in this Zoom, in the beginning of the month of Safar, have a list of all your relatives. And the one who never call you, call him. Anyone that will never give you, give him or her. The one who never visit you, visit him. Dhul Qurba, which means your Silat al-Rahim, your relative, try to be kind to them. Allah will reward you. The category number after that, do you know how many orphans do we have in the world? Do you attend the speech of Brother Mubin when he talked about the camp, the orphanage all over the world? At least if you can take care about one of them, Allah will put you next shoulder to shoulder with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on the day of judgment. And the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ said, the best house in this world is a house has an orphan and somebody take care about him or her. And the opposite one, the worst house in this world, you have a house and you have an orphan and you are humiliate that orphan. Wal-iyazu billah. The other category is the word miskeen, the one who is not able to take care about himself or herself. Let us take care about them. And the category which make me a little scary, and I am shivering when I read about this two type of the people, is our neighbor. Imam, what do you mean by neighbor? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about two type of neighbors. The first neighbor is al-jar al-dil junub, which means your relative, either to be a Muslim or to be have a blood relationship, or to be maybe your cousin or any kind of relative relationship between you and that neighbor. And the second neighbor is wal-jar al-junub, which means a neighbor you have no blood relationship between you and him or her. Do you know what Rasulullah ﷺ used to say? Jibreel alayhi salam used to talk to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he said, Awsani ma zala Jibreel yusini bil jar hatta dhanantu annahu sayuwarrithuhu aw kama qala. Angel Jibreel keep talking to me about my neighbor, talking to me about my neighbor, talking to me about neighbor, till I come to the point, after I die, my neighbor will inherit my property. Either a Muslim or non-Muslim, still our neighbor, we have to take care about them, inshallah ta'ala. And was-sahib bil-jam, either your wife, your spouse, sahiba, or we'll say the one who travel with you from one area to area, and the last two, inshallah, ibn sabil, the one who is traveling from one area to area, lost his budget, lost his money, lost his property. We have to help that person. And finally, that was the last word came from the mouth of Rasulullah ﷺ before he died. Imagine, my dear brothers and sisters, I am on the bed of the death, and my wife and my kids around me. And Allah give me one chance to say to them one word or two sentences, what I supposed to say. Fear Allah, take care about yourself, take care about your belonging. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last word come from his mouth on the time of the death, he said, I call as-salatu as-salah wa ma malakat aymanukum. Take care about your salah, your namaz. Don't miss your namaz, because that is the best thing you meet Allah with. And take care about the lady Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it under your hand, or you are in charge for them. Either your wife is, your daughter, your sister, any lady, we call it milk al-yamin. Let me pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our gathering. Let me pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the soul of our parent. And let me pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us not to worship anyone beside him. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair, Imam Ahmad, for your insight, interpretation, your tafsir. And mashallah, I think it's second to none in this halqa. Whenever you come, then you just highlight the importance of ayah recited. May Allah reward you again. As I don't see Imam Muhammad there, but let me have the honor to request my sister, Hala, during the introduction of tonight's speakers, Sister Chaplain Patty. So, Faddal, my friend.
Thank you so much, Brother Abdul Majid. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you so much, Imam Hamad, for the wonderful presentation and remembering 9/11. I would like to welcome Chaplain Patty Anton. She comes to us from Penn Muslim Community. I have her bio, mashallah. Patricia Anton is the Muslim chaplain at the University of Pennsylvania. She has come into chaplaincy with a background of working with Muslims, interfaith, academic, and peace-building institutions, including the International Interfaith Peace Corps, Islamic Society of North America, Islamic Relief, Pillars of Peace, and American University, among others. Patricia studied and worked have taken her to Egypt, Jordan, Maldives, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Syria, Turkey, and the UAE, Yemen, and Senegal. Patricia received her BA in International Relations from Ohio State University, MA in Islamic Studies from the Graduate School of Islamic and Social Sciences, a graduate fellowship in nonprofit management and governance. I'm sorry, I lost the Graduate School of Islamic Social Sciences, a graduate fellowship of nonprofit management at governance from Indiana University, additional graduate studies at George Mason University, Institute of Conflict Analysis and Resolution, and completed a certificate in Islamic chaplaincy with Hartford Seminary. Welcome, Sister Chaplain Patty. We are so happy to have you. Itfaddali.
Assalamu alaikum. Subhanallah. It's such an honor to really be into your company, and I'm really humbled by the invitation and to be in this group. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I intend learning and teaching, reminding myself first and foremost, and reminding others, and enjoining good and forbidding evil, and calling, inshallah, to the way that Allah has laid out in the noble Quran and according to the sunnah of our beloved messenger, peace and blessings be upon him. listening to the beautiful recitation of Quran, listening to these beautiful words from the Imam. Indeed, my heart is humbled, and I really don't want to say a word. I just want to keep listening. But I've been called on, so I guess I'm obliged to continue. And I ask Allah to be able to allow me to bring some benefit into this space. And mashallah, it's so beautiful. The best things are the things that are done regularly, and to hear that you've been every night connecting. This is like this is a tradition that is being kept. Inshallah, may be a light for all of you that gets you from day to day, and including onto the time that Allah has put before us. The Imam was saying so beautifully, and I just want to share, because I was with you this morning and doing these monthly food deliveries, and the Imam was saying about the rights of neighbors. And so, we picked up some of those groceries and we brought them to Philly, and we dropped them off with the sister, who, does that distribution in her neighborhood with her neighbors. And there was a gentleman that came while we were dropping off the food, and he was one of the people who was going to be receiving the groceries. And he came up, and he was so energetic, and he wanted me to guess his age, actually, and I would have guessed in the 70s, to be honest. And then he's like, I'm 95. He did a little kind of jaw, a little dance. He got so much energy. He's going to be 96 in December, and told us something of his story. But, as we're finishing up, dropping things off and headed back to our cars, he said, "This is the best neighbor that I've ever had. This is the best neighbor that I've ever had." And she said, "This is what a Muslim is. A Muslim, can't be just living here while our neighbor is hungry." So, inshallah, may Allah, reward all of those and bless all of those that are, doing their best to take care of their neighbors and to take care of their brothers and sisters. And this is the kind of brotherhood and sisterhood that we want, right? We're partnering together for the sake of Allah. And this isn't my topic today, but I just wanted to share the story because of being with you today and because of the Imam's remarks. This was kind of last minute, so I haven't done, much preparation, but, we are here at September 11th, and those of us that, are a little older, my students, mostly, they have no memory of this. Maybe they weren't born yet, or maybe they were babies, when this happened. So it's different for them than it is for those of us that maybe perhaps were already adults when this event happens. And when we think of this 20 years, there's a lot that's contained within that. And, I was, helping someone, move today, and we were driving back, and there was this pickup truck with this flag going off the back that said "Never forget," And, this week I came across a poem by our brother, Baraka Blue. I don't know if any of you know him, but he's a Muslim out, I believe, in Seattle, does amazing work out in that direction, but he has some nice books of poetry. This one's called Read Bad Diaspora. And he has a poem entitled, "What are we supposed to remember again?" I'm gonna read it. So, what are we supposed to remember again? Let's stand at this crossroads and laugh at our death, and cry at our laughing, and yell at our silence, and be moved by our stillness, and be safe from our viciousness, and believe in believing, and knowing the knower, and now at different levels. Or are you still on that? I'm still on this. Old blocks, new faces, 2000 and now. Still calling on the Great Spirit in Cherokee and Arabi, singing songs of reverse frontier marching, facing backwards, it's forwards. To look ahead, prostrate. What are we supposed to remember again? I can't see past this meanness after a morning of sadness, a morning. It was resonating with me a bit, and I wanted to really share it with you because, we have these words, and again, for 20 years, it's a long journey, and there's so much that's there. And I think you've had a beautiful interfaith gathering, and you remember maybe some of that initial solidarity that was there 20 years ago when, people of different backgrounds kind of came together and shared in that morning and shared in just feeling the tragedy and praying for those that were lost, right? But what followed was also difficult, right? And now we're having the people coming from Afghanistan, and that also, it brings up so many different things for so many different people. So many years that have different trauma in them. There's too many stories to really unpack, right? And so I'm not going to try and unpack them. What I really wanted to do, though, is just share something from the Sirah that is where my heart has been lately, right? And because things are connected, right? What happened 20 years ago is connected with where we are right now in this moment that we're in. And as we're talking about this anniversary, we're also, carrying a lot of other things with us, and we're dealing with a lot of other situations, and it's all kind of coming together. And the story that's kind of coming to me, and the lesson that's coming to me, is really from about the 19th year of the prophetic mission, right? So, after those 13 years that the Muslims were in Mecca, and that they were persecuted, in which they had a complete nonviolent situation, but they were, put through so much difficulty, right? Until they were driven from their homes and they became refugees, right? And when they go into Medina, there, the armies still come, right? It's not like they could just be refugees and move and be left alone. No, shortly thereafter, they have the Battle of Badr, and then Badr again, and you have Uhud, right? And then there was the Battle of the Trench. And, I think of the Battle of the Trench, and I think of these years, we've felt entrenched at times as a Muslim community. We've had those moments where we've, felt that we really had to be on the defensive, because of the Islamophobia, right? And it seems like it comes sometimes from different directions, right? Because we're trying to, obviously we stand against, violence and injustice and the kinds of acts that would happen on September 11th. So we stand firmly against that, and we have stood firmly against that, in honesty, for more than 20 years, because we stood against that as a community before September 11th was a thing, right? And those of us who were there, we remember, we spoke against these kind of things, and we spoke against this kind of mentality before this event happened, right? But then at the same time, we are sometimes looked at as if we are the problem and we are the cause, right? And we've had to do so much in that front as well. So not long, then after this Battle of the Trench, right, where all these armies from this coalition kind of marches on Medina, right, hoping to finish the Muslims, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has a vision, right? And what is his vision? It doesn't make if you were my students, I'd make you answer. So, but I don't know if I'm going to get you all to do that today. But so he has this vision of making Umrah, right? And of course, the vision of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is something that is a direction, and it is something that is true, and it's something that is indicating to a reality. And so he conveys this to his companions, right? And they make preparations, about 1,000 of them, the companions. They make preparations to travel, right, to Mecca for Umrah, right? And I believe it was Abu Bakr, the companion. He's like, shouldn't we take some armor and some weapons with us, right? Because after all, they had just marched from Mecca, right? Their army to come, to Medina, right? And they had done this. They had marched almost every year since they had come to Medina. They had marched armies towards them, right? And the Prophet ﷺ says, nope. They're not taking the armor. They're not taking any weaponry. They're not taking the mounts that they would take if they were going to battle. No, they don't. They put on the garments. They get rid of their regular clothes, right? With my students, they say they're drip, right? all these things that they wear. They put on the ihram. The animals they have are garland for sacrifice, and what would be for travel. So anyone who would see them would see clearly this is intention of pilgrimage. There's no intention of hostility and no intention really even of defense in this case, right? And they travel this way to Mecca, right? Trusting in this vision that comes from the Prophet ﷺ. And what we know is that they stop outside of Hudaybiyah, or they stop outside of Mecca at Hudaybiyah, right? And they begin this process of sending, trying to have some diplomacy so that they can enter it, right? So they don't just kind of barge in, they kind of do a knocking on the door, metaphorically speaking, right? As they send someone in, they have that back and forth, and they had sent one companion, but then he's like, no, I don't got no status with them. And you know how the Quraysh are, they care about status. So you need to send someone that has a little more connections, right? And so they were going to send Omar, right? And Omar's like, yeah, no, because he hadn't exactly kept good diplomatic relationships, right? And so he's like, yeah, I'm not the right person. Uthman is the right person. Okay. And Uthman, had good relations, and he had that diplomatic personality. So he still had good relations and he was respected. And this is another thing. It's like, we need to have people like this. Even when we're in conflict, we need to have people who keep good relations, right? Those people who can still have a conversation, right? Who can be those go-betweens, right? To get people out of an entrenched space of conflict and to build connections and relationships. And Uthman was that person. But anyway, so he goes in and, they are like refusing to let the Muslims come in and to make Umrah, but they're like, you can do it if you want to do it, right? And of course he refuses. He's not going to make Umrah without the Prophet ﷺ. None of the companions would do that, right? None of them would sit there and be like, I'm going to go and leave the Prophet behind. But they detain him a while. And they detain him like long enough that, there's a slight concern that maybe something happened to him. And maybe he was killed or something like that. And of course, if someone kills a messenger and an emissary, that is an act of war, right? And so, God inspires the prophets, peace be upon him, to kind of renew that pledge of allegiance with those companions that are with him, right? And so they gather together under the tree, and, here they are, no weapons, no armor, right? And they're again, putting their hand and pledging that to the Prophet ﷺ that they got his back and that they're going to follow his lead. Whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes, they're behind him, they're standing with him, whatever goes down. And every one of them was willing to sacrifice their life in trusting and loving the Prophet ﷺ. So what happens next, right? And what happens next is that they end up having to negotiate a peace treaty, right? And I'm not going through all the details of this, right? But, they come up with a peace treaty. And again, this isn't, the fact that they're doing a peace treaty, are they doing a peace treaty because the Quraysh had a change of heart at this time? No, right? He clearly says in it, no, I don't believe that you're Rasulullah, right? And has them cross that out from the document. They're not making peace because the Quraysh had changed heart, right? But they're making peace anyway. And among the conditions of the peace is 10 years, no hostility, ability to make alliances with different tribes. But there was one thing that was particularly unbalanced about this. And that was that it basically said that if anybody was with the Muslims in Medina and they wanted to return to Mecca, that the Muslims would not stop them. Anybody who wants to go back to Mecca and return to the Quraysh, they are free to do so, right? But it was not reciprocated, right? So Anybody who wanted, if they were Muslim and their families were not letting them migrate to Medina, right? If they escaped, if they ran away, the Prophet and the people and the companions in Medina would not be able to take them in, right? And that was a pretty hard thing. And this is a term of, that was difficult in it, but the Prophet made that agreement, right? Knowing that the greater peace, right? And to have peace and to no longer be at war was of greater benefit, right? And we know that as soon as they signed the treaty, right, that one of the Muslims escaped. And he came to the camp of the Muslims, wanting to join the Muslims, wanting to be with them, right? And they had to watch him get drugged back and taken, essentially as a prisoner. And it broke the hearts of the companions. It was such a difficult thing to watch, right? And so this is the time when we hear that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says, okay, that's it, time to wrap up camp, time to shave your head and to finish whatever rites, we're going back. And the companions are just freeze, right? They just, they made that pledge, we're behind you no matter what. But they weren't prepared for this. They weren't prepared to turn away and to march back home. They weren't prepared for the terms of peace. That was harder on them than the fighting would have been, And so we know that the Prophet ﷺ, with the advice of his wife, Salama, shaves his head. And when they see the Prophet do it, they follow the example, right? It gets them out of their shock, right? But as they're kind of going back, Omar is also, he's upset, right? And he's like, Ya Rasulullah, he's like, aren't you the messenger of God? Aren't we on the right path? And aren't they the ones that have been, having shirk? Aren't they the ones who have been oppressive, right? And didn't you say we were going for Umrah? How is it that we're taking such a humiliating agreement? Right? How difficult that was. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him, yeah, Umar, I didn't tell you it was going to be this year, right? And this is part of how the visions are sometimes, right? That God gives us, sometimes the direction to get us to where we need to be, but we don't always got the timeline figured out, right? So the timeline comes in God's time, right? And God isn't hasty, right? Because God is the creator of time, so he's not in any hurry about nothing. And then what revelation comes, right? After that. And this is basically the occasion of revelation of Surah Al-Fath, right? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم ومن ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمتك عليك يهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله النصرا عزيزا هو الذي أنزل سكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانهم مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما. Verily, we have given you a manifest opening, a clear victory, in some translation you could say, right? That God can forgive you your sins, both past and future, and complete his favor upon you and guide you to a straight path, that God might help you with a strong help, right? And it is he who sent down that tranquility in the hearts of the believers, that they may increase their faith in addition to the faith they already had. And to God belongs all the hosts of the heavens and the earth, and God is ever knowing and wise, right? So the revelation comes at this time when they're feeling a little humiliated, right? And God is telling them, you just won this. You signed that treaty and you just won this thing. It's done, And so in this, Allah is transforming our understanding of conflict and peace and what are we trying to achieve. Because in the Jahiliyyah time, You know, it's all about the vengeance, right? It's all about showing you're strong, all about showing that no one can do anything, right? And this comes and says, no, this agreement, you know, this is better than if you had beat them in combat. And later in the surah, it actually says, had you fought, you would have beaten them. But this peace, it's better than that, right? Because there's a lot of harm in war, right? And that's why we see the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, anytime he's given the opportunity to go for peace, he goes for it, right? And those that followed him, when you see what his family did as well in the history, you see that they also, whenever they could go for peace, they went for peace. And here he also, the way even he chooses the names of Allah in this case, right? He's Alim and Hakim. It's comforting the believers, saying, I know you don't see the whole picture and it doesn't look pretty at this moment, but God has that plan. And this is important for us, I think to remember sometimes, because sometimes we see things and it's difficult, right? It's difficult to see circumstances. You know, it's difficult to have agreements with people who've been unjust, right? But how do we have that courage, right? How do we find that sakina in our hearts too? And that sakina you'll find was given to the believers in each time of difficulty, right? And the Quran tells us also before Badr and all of these different times of real difficulty, and when they were really in precarious situations, right? God puts that sakina in the heart. I think I've probably talked for a long enough, and I hope that there's some benefit, and like I said, I didn't do a lot of preparation, so I hope the points come across, inshallah. Maybe we can just move to some questions or discussion.
Jazakallah khair. We're taking any questions. Brother Abdul Majid would like to ask you a question. Itfaddal, Brother Abdul Majid.
Jazakallah khair. Again, it's a very good presentation itself. The way you related to 9/11 happening 20 years ago. My question to you is, I think when you mentioned Sulh Hudaybiyah, there were terms and conditions for the Sulh Hudaybiyah, right?
Mm.
Which one is more relevant to the circumstances of 9/11 that happened in this country 20 years ago?
SubhanAllah, I mean, I think when I'm thinking of the connection with 9/11, right? In one thing, it's also this time period, right? That thinking of there's been a period of hostility that's similar in length, right? And think of it in that sense. And I think, again, there is so much that is there to be unpacked, right? That we can sit here and talk about, what happened the day of, right? That these non-state actors, right? They get planes and they put them into things, and this is a horrible, horrible, tragic thing, right? And it's something that is, SubhanAllah, the condition of the human heart, it doesn't change, right? We have enough, it doesn't change in the large sense. Yes, as an individual sense, we grow, we heal, we can be guided, right? We can have forgiveness and redemption. And I thank you also for this, but is to say that one of the things that's unique about September 11th, right, also is just part of modernity, right, is the technology that's available to someone who has a sick heart is not something that was there before, right? When we think of the scope of the loss on September 11th, this is multiple times the people who died in all the battles that are related in the Sirah, right? Very few people died in these battles. So, it is I mean, in relative to the kind of numbers and catastrophe that we're talking about today in terms of human life. But one of the points, and I thank you, but I think I sort of skipped over, is, what happens then after that treaty of, and so I dropped the story too soon, is essentially that opens, and that year that follows, the community flourishes in a way it never flourished before, right? That conversations can happen that didn't happen before because they're no longer entrenched. They're no longer on the defense, right? They are able to reach out. They're able to have relations, and people come into Islam from all over. They start coming from, the delegations are coming, the letters are being sent, right? And the community is flourishing, right? And what happens, right, then after this is that, just about a year or so later, right, is the actual Fath of Mecca. So without bloodshed, right, you have a circumstance with the very people who would have fought them that day, they also become Muslim. They become the people next to them, right? So these Quraysh that we talk about in the Sirah and that we hear about in the Quran, who are so obstinate, and who are the oppressors and who are the people who are opposing the Prophet ﷺ, they become his companions. Right? And this is part of what we need to remember as well too, is that we don't fixate someone into a permanent enemy category, right? That was Jahiliyyah, where we say that's that tribe, that's that group, and they did this to us once upon a time, and we're never gonna forget that, right? We're gonna get vengeance at some point. Maybe it'll be the next generation, whatever. No. That Saddam wanted their guidance and he wanted their transformation, right? And so we need to have that too, as well. That whoever it is that's done wrong, and Allah knows best who that is, that these are the people that Allah wants us to call to, right? And we want to show the way for them to change. Inshallah. Is that
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, that's a good answer on that. But what is the role of his wife? Saw when he really fumbled the ball at certain points, but she put him on track. Okay, what he should do, and he took her advice. What is the role of? We always say there is a woman behind a man, and that justifies. That's Ummul Mu'mineen Sauda gave him advice, and the very right advice she gave. Can you comment? I don't need any more than what you have already said. A very brief comment on that, please. The role of Ummul Mu'mineen Sauda in the Sulh Hudaybiyah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's beautiful. And I mean, I think that we see, such beautiful examples of marriage partnerships, demonstrated through the Prophet ﷺ, right? And that trust and that comfort that, they know what's going on, his wives know what's going on, right? And everyone, they can have a different perspective, right? And so her having that perspective, right? So we say the believers are mirrors to the believers. So even with the Prophet ﷺ, she's able to give him a slight different angle, right? To help him get, kind of unstuck at that moment with that right advice that says, okay, they're stunned, they're not doing what you told them, but if you do it, they will follow you in action, right? And of course, and because he's the Prophet ﷺ, he's got no ego, right? His nafs was well submitted, right? So there's no, of course he would listen to the advice of his wife. That's not even a question, right?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Sister Hala can follow on. I think she has a lot of questions.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Chaplain Patty. I just have a comment. What I understood from your presentation is the importance of a lot of people being diplomatic and conflict resolution. We need more of them in order for the future, the betterment of, getting the winnings without fighting, looking at the benefits without bloodshed. And that's what I think all of these presentation is trying to tell us.
Yeah. I think, one of the other beautiful things in the Surah Al-Fath, right, is it talks about how it was talking about the disbelievers, and it talks about the hypocrites, and it talks about having this bad opinion of Allah. And when I was discussing this with my imam, he says, the bad opinion of Allah, right, is that they thought that God was okay with their oppression. They thought that God had endorsed the status quo, right? That is their evil opinion that they had of God, right? And how often do we have that in our society too, right? That we just think this is the way things are, this is the way it's always been, this is the structures, we just have to accept, the oppressive systems. This is not having a good opinion of Allah, right? And so, part of it is believing in that possibility of change, right? Believing in the possibility of change in society, and believing in the possibility of the redemption of people who do wrong, right? The ones like Omar radiallahu anhu, right? Who at one moment he's going to try and kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he's his right hand, or Khalid ibn Walid. I mean, at the time of the signing of the treaty, Khalid ibn Walid was still going to fight against him, but he becomes for him in just such a short time later, right? So remembering that, and then also the orientation of our hearts, right? That we don't fall into allowing our Islam to only be an identity, right? In which we see ourselves as in opposition to others and others in opposition to us, right? That Islam becomes our tribalism, right? And that we can have these same kind of reactionary things. But instead we say, what is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to say, these human beings, this is nas, this is the nas, this is the humanity that the Quran is talking about, that God was sent, like the Prophet was sent as a mercy to all the worlds, to everyone. So when we're dealing with the people who are still perhaps in jahiliyyah, right, or that they're in ignorance, or who are blatantly in opposition to truth, right, we would say kuffar or something like this, right, that what we want is that these are people with the ruh of Allah, and we want them to change. We want them first and foremost to stop doing harm and to do bad, right? We want their redemption, because what could be more beautiful, right? And so to get away from these mentalities that sometimes is in the culture, right, of we want people who've done wrong to punish. No, the messengers were sent to save people from punishment, right? And that's what we want. And that's an orientation that we need to have in our heart. Sorry.
We usually, first of all, I would thank you so much for coming. And please promise you will come again. Be a regular with us. We really enjoyed it very much. We usually have the speaker do a small dua, whatever you want, and then at the end we recite Surah Al-Asr, and then we say goodbye to Ahmed, our wonderful, our youngest member. He's deaf.
Okay, mashallah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Okay, and who recites Asr?
You could, if you want.
Yeah, if the Sister Halaqah do that, it's okay. We have Brother Majid, but he never even speak. I think I will. We shall the honor of if he says Asr Surah. So
that would be
perfect.
Right. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sister Hala.
Sister Patricia, the dua, please.
Jazakallah khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, we start first with praising you, Ya Allah, for all the blessings that you've given us, all the beauty that you've given us in our life and in our world, all the health and wealth and well-being that you've given us, Ya Allah, for the life itself that you've given us. Ya Allah, you have surrounded us with so many. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. And we would be remiss if we did not first praise you for all of these things, Ya Allah, Ya Kareem. Ya Allah, we ask you to guide us to the best actions, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin. We ask you for forgiveness, Ya Allah, for all of our mistakes, for all of our faults, Ya Allah, for us, for our families, for our parents, for our loved ones, for our communities, for our leaders, Ya Allah. We ask you to make us people of sincere tawbah, Ya Allah. We ask this for our own hearts, Ya Allah. We ask this for our families, for our community, Ya Allah. We ask this for our community. We ask this for our ummah. We ask this for our world, Ya Allah. Guide us all, Ya Allah, to sincere tawbah that turns us back to you, that turns us back to the Sirat al-Mustaqim, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, guide us to the ways of peace, Ya Allah, and make us of those who are sincere in working and striving for your sake, for peace and well-being. Make us that bring the light of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Allah. Let us make those that bring his light and his example and his love and the mercy that you sent through him, Ya Allah. Make us those who pass that on to all of those around us, Ya Allah. Make us those that pass it on to our children, Ya Allah. Make us those who pass it on to our neighbors, Ya Allah. Make us those who pass it on to all those that we interact with, whether it's in school, whether it's in workplace, whether it's the Jara Janub or the person in the grocery store, Ya Allah. Make us carriers of this light. Make us carriers of the Sunnah, Ya Allah. Make us, Ya Allah. We ask you for your mercy, Ya Allah. We ask you for healing for all of those who are sick, Ya Allah. We ask you for lifting of the pandemic from us, Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Allah. We ask you that we come out of this time and this pandemic and being in quarantine, Ya Allah. We ask that you make it a time of metamorphosis, that we come out, if we were caterpillars, that we come out butterflies, Ya Allah, that we are made better by this, and that we are transformed to be better than we were before, both as individuals and as a society, Ya Allah. We ask you to make us divested from all the forms and all the ways that people have profited from human suffering, Ya Allah. We ask you to put a wide distance between us and all of those ways that in society people temporarily profited from oppression, Ya Allah, and make us those that guide to other ways and other paths, Ya Allah, and that we are the servants that are working for ways of truth and ways of justice, that we are shining lights on the ways of truth and justice, Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimin.
Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Yes. We shall request Brother Majid to do this. Well, Asri in
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil. Sorry, I was mute. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq وتواصوا بالصبر.
Yes, this is for you do for Ahmed because of his thing.
Ahmed, I love you.
Brother Azagah, welcome. I'm so happy you got better. I'm so happy you're here with us, Brother Azagah.